Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, our speakers are Ali Perkins and Emily Spala from Satisfied. Before I turn it over to them, I would like to let those of you know who are live with us that you may submit questions during the webinar via the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be able to go over those questions when they're finished presenting. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ali and Emily.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Keegan.
Hi,
Allie, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. All right. Well, hopefully everyone can see our screen. I'm super excited here. We're going to be talking about if AI recommends a dealer, will it recommend yours? So excited to be with Allie of Root and Beta. And as Keegan mentioned, and hopefully we can talk about some cool stuff today. So I think we have a quick poll. Maybe Keegan, I think you have that set up ready to launch. If not, maybe we can just do a raise of hands in chat if that doesn't start. But I'd love to know, for those of you joining us this morning, have you used any AI tools for recommendations? So ChatGPT, Perplexity, right? You name it, Claude. Oh, there's our poll. Sweet. So if you guys can answer that, I'd love to know from those in the room joining us today, how many of you are utilizing AI tools? Give everyone a second here to answer. All right. I think hopefully this will display the results for everybody to see. If not, I can share them with you as soon as this ends. Looks like maybe we've got most everybody in. And those who are joining us, if you get a chance to answer the quick poll, if you've used any AI tools for recommendations. So it looks like overwhelmingly, most of you have or are using that today. Maybe some of you have had some apprehension, and we can talk about that. But in reality, oh, there we go. Perfect. It just popped up. Maybe a little lag on my end. So 85% yes and 15% no. And I think this is probably what we'll see if we were to poll your customer base, right, that you're marketing to prospects very similarly, right? So majority of people today are utilizing AI tools when it comes to recommended services. Awesome. So what do Ali and I have to do about AI and recommendations, and how are we reliable sources for you guys to contribute to this? So I thought it'd be important for us to share a little bit about our backgrounds at Satisfied and Root and Beta and what we're doing today. So at Satisfied, we are really taking your customer experiences and turning those into the story that AI tells. So we have been working with dealers for almost 30 years, capturing customer feedback through automated invitations for them to share feedback privately and publicly through reviews like on Google. With that, we're analyzing every trend and interaction that your customer has. We're able to see what happy customers say, and then when customers maybe have a bad experience too, what they stop saying before they disappear and maybe defect and go somewhere else. So it's really those experiences that are starting to shape both the story that AI is telling, and so how people are perceiving, right, your business today as they interact with these AI tools. And I'll turn it over to Allie to share a little bit about herself and Root and Beta.
I'm Ali Perkins. I'm the Director of Search and Organic Experience at Root and Beta. And Root and Beta is a digital marketing firm. We specialize in agriculture brands and equipment dealers. So I started out doing content and SEO. And of course, as AI came about and everything has evolved, we are now following that thread into what has evolved into GEO and AEO and all of these AI search. It's all still rooted in SEO, but there are different limbs of this beast that have now evolved. So I'm really excited to get into talking a little bit about what we've seen from our dealers that are doing their listings and keeping up with their reviews, and how much of a difference that has showed in when they're getting recommended and when they're not. That's me. I'm excited to talk about it.
Okay, so what are we going to cover in this session this morning? So we want to talk about how AI search and discovery works, right? So why customers are now asking AI versus Googling, and sort of what feedback they're getting back. And then what is AI actually using to recommend dealers? So when a customer does come and ask that question, what are some of the key signals that are driving those recommendations? And I think what's really great is we have some real world examples that Allie and I have pulled back through both her research and ours to see what happens when you can impact the results of those queries and searches that are happening across AI tools. And so we'll talk a little bit about as well, like the visibility and what's at stake by not doing this, right? So we want to understand the impact of doing it, but also not doing it. And then I think what's most importantly, I know whenever I am talking or doing a webinar is I really want to make sure that you get something practical that you can take away from this session. So no matter where you're at in your journey, whether you're just at the very beginning or maybe you're partway through and you've already sort of embraced some of these AI tools, what can you do as some practical steps to take away from here? So we'll talk about that you can implement right away. And I think as Keegan mentioned, there is a chat. So if you guys have questions or Q&A, you can pop them in there and we will reserve some time at the end to address those questions.
Now with AI, it's really just word of mouth amplified. So I always tell my clients, I want their brand to be the most popular girl in school because people are talking about your brand. AI is talking about your brand, whether or not you have input in it. So we're going to talk today a little bit about what you can do to make your brand the most popular girl in school and how to make sure that you have control over what's actually showing up when you're already being talked about. So 1.2% of brands do get recommended from ChatGPT, which is a super low number. It's much higher when you look at brands that show up in the Google Maps pack and things like that. But the reason that I think it's important to talk about that is because when it's such a small probability already, everything that you can do to make sure that you are in the best possible position to be in that 1.5% and then beyond in other platforms, it's just really important to do right now. So that's what we're here to talk about.
Awesome. So I think, if we have marketers on the call today, I'm sure we do. We've talked about SEO for years and the importance of search engine and being on the first page and those things. And things have really shifted very quickly, right? With AI, things are changing fast. And so, just in recent months, year, I'm sure for a lot of us, talked about AI a year ago and didn't really know exactly what that meant and what those tools were. And so while this has happened, it's also been a little bit quiet as things have changed so fast behind the scenes, how AI tools work versus search engines. And that has changed a lot. We've maybe heard the term zero click. So when we're utilizing these search engines results, they're coming back with like a summary. Maybe you see that in Google if you are a Googler, and when you look at the AI mode, or if you have that turned on, you can see Google AI overviews. And that's what they mean by zero clicks, is we want to be in that top summary results. And so it doesn't matter the page that you get listed on anymore in the search results. A lot of people are no longer scrolling down past that summary to see any of the listings. And I think we'll probably see that trend more and more. And then as we talk about maybe people moving into tools like utilizing Claude or ChatGPT, et cetera, they're going to see those results just come back in the AI recommendations when it answers the question that you've prompted it with, right? But that information is coming from different sources, right, than before. So there were different activities that you would take to achieve SEO goals for listings, but a lot of this is coming from different information and content that is available online for these AI tools to pull from. And so we look at the categories of where these queries are driven from when you prompt an AI tool, with a specific question. So sometimes you'll see someone search for an excavator or maybe a specific tractor or a dealer that could service a piece of equipment near me. And so those answers that are coming back is like a summary of this dealer near this area. And we'll show you some of these examples. And so it's not just a listing of businesses based in a certain circumference, right? There's content that's being pulled back in there. And at Satisfied, since we're helping dealers collect feedback that is sort of driving some of this AI summary results, we're seeing that the impact of what customers are saying is directly impacting that. And How can we help dealers leverage the feedback that their customers are already providing them in ways that they can feed these search engines based on the content that's available out there?
Absolutely. There are a lot of different things going on with AI search that are just really just not as straightforward as traditional SEO, not as straightforward as the results that you see in Google. And it's definitely not keyword focused in the same way. So that's where that category-based queries comes in. People are asking real questions that they would ask another person. And then when it comes to reviews, we're mostly seeing either the customers that are being asked a lot for positive reviews, or we're seeing only the really, really negative ones, the 80 to 100, that 20% that is not just walking away silent.
Yeah,
So that's, again, I didn't hear everything you said, but yes, there's a lot
that's
that's
fantastic.
happening kind of under the radar. And so we're here to help you keep up as it's all happening right under our noses
Yes, rapidly too, right?
rapidly.
Yes. So we talked about how these tools are working. So some of the signals that I think are really important for you to know that are on this call, like what is it that's driving these results? What are things that you can do to impact whether or not AI recommends your dealership? When we talk about reviews specifically over the past, I think people have really been focused on their review ratings, their volume, and maybe the frequency of when those things are coming back. I think we're seeing a real shift with this most recent change. And honestly, like recency, I think is becoming more and more important. So volume has been important and something we've been heavily focused on, but the consistency and the recency of that. So having those coming in on a very regular basis, we don't want them to be very lumpy, which I think through manual efforts, we have seen that a lot at dealerships where they do campaigns to try to get staff to ask for feedback. And that can have a negative impact now as well. So really having that consistent volume coming in is super helpful. But the interesting one, I think, is this last one when we talk about specificity. Oh my gosh, I'm going to stumble over this word and I need some water. But it's the content, right? Of the comments that people are leaving inside the reviews are becoming ever more important, which I'm not sure many dealers have focused on yet today. Ellie, have you experienced much with this on your end?
Yeah, I'm so glad that all of this is in here because I think that it's also important. It's all things that I've seen with my clients. I'm going to back up just for a second to going back to the number one, the review volume. I'm so glad that it says on this card that consistency over time matters more than that 1 month spike because that's always been the case to some degree, but
Yeah.
especially right now with the rise of bot activity, it is so, so important because, and it's not just reviews either. It's the same thing, on your website. If you get a whole bunch of hits on your webpage all at once, that looks suspicious. It's the same thing with reviews. So I've had clients that have done these review campaigns where they push really hard for, a couple weeks and they get maybe hundreds of new reviews. But if that immediately drops off, that's not actually helpful long term. So you do want to be pushing that over time. And then, of course, as you talked about already, the recency. You could have thousands of reviews and a really big, well-established brand, but if you haven't gotten any in the last 3 months, then you might as well not have any. The specificity, I think, is important on two levels. One, the people who are leaving the reviews, the more specific they are, the more trustworthy they look and the
Yeah.
more authentic it looks. And at the same time, when you respond to those reviews, if you can be specific in calling them by name or mentioning specific things that they said in the review, that also is a signal that, hey, this is a real person responding to a real person. This isn't an automated thing. This isn't bot activity. And then again, even just to the human eye, seeing those specifics does just reassure people that this is probably a real interaction and not some employee that was made to go leave a review.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the replies too, because I think that's really important. And I know there are other tools out there that definitely push for those automated replies that are pretty generic. And then you see them repeated oftentimes. And that triggers, again, sort of warning signals when we're seeing a lot of that bot type activity that takes place.
Absolutely. And I'll add one more thing to this
Oh,
that I
yeah.
just thought about. If you do have a lot of reviews coming in really consistently, but maybe I've talked to some dealers who are a little worried about doing that because they had maybe certain locations that they really need to work on the customer service, and they were worried about
Yeah.
the rating that they would get.
Yeah.
But I have seen with my dealers that even those with lower ratings, if they might have a 3.8 rather than a 4.8, if they have a lot more consistent reviews, they still place better than those that have a nearly 5-star review, but aren't getting many of them consistently.
Yeah, that is so important. I'm glad you said that. I know I said at the beginning that it's the ratings aren't as important as they used to be. And I think that used to be like the number one thing that everyone was so focused on. But I think that's a really great point, that people's apprehension that they have around asking for this feedback, because it is public and it's not private, and they feel probably a bit out of control with it being left publicly like that. It is much more beneficial to have that feedback coming in, even if it is a little bit lower of a rating than, what you'd ideally like to have. And the feedback is helpful, right? So don't ignore that feedback that could be beneficial about maybe potential changes that someone wants to see, expectations that they might have that maybe you can't meet right at the moment, but utilize that too to drive some change and improvement within the dealership too.
Great point.
Yeah. Okay, so questions that we should be asking right now, which I think is really important. And that's what we're here to talk about today, right? So, like, if a customer asked AI to trust what dealership, and what would it say about your dealership? So, if for those of you maybe at the beginning that said that you're not utilizing AI tools to make recommendations, this is what AI is doing, right? So it is providing back recommendations to you. Maybe give it a try and see what it says about your dealership if you haven't done yet. So yeah, I think that's a really fun exercise to see what AI tools have to say about your dealership. And sorry, Allie, I'm probably taking over a little bit here. Go ahead for it.
No, you're great. I love the conversation back and forth. I wanted to add on the how many people have used AI to actually ask a question. I think that it's interesting too that some people that I've talked to about this that have said, I don't use AI at all, sometimes don't even realize when they actually are getting AI recommendations. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody
Yeah,
is. But even now, when you just Google something, if you get an AI overview or you end up going into AI mode, that can happen when you don't even realize it. Or if you ask your Amazon Alexa a question, or, there's so many different ways now that
Siri. Yeah,
not
yeah.
intentionally going and logging into ChatGPT, but you are still, yes, Siri, you were
Oh,
still,
and
oops, she's
there's Siri listening to me.
yeah,
So
right.
sorry.
So I think it's just important. It's a good reminder to give people, even super anti AI people, you're probably accidentally still using it, even if you hate that. It's just a reality now. And yes, like Emily said, it is recommending it is making recommendations to people, even if you're not on there and even if you avoid it. It is really important to be paying attention to that. And it's really, we're in a both and world now. It's not either or, it's not Google or AI. It has to be both and to get the most out of your strategy.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think to talk about strategy, don't feel behind by any means. I think this is all very new to everyone that's on this call here. And I think everyone's trying to figure out, what is the strategy? How do we make sure that AI is recommending us? That's what we're here to help with today. So hopefully, if you've got questions that are popping up, you can throw those in that chat so we can answer them as this comes out. But we're trying to stay very much abreast as to what's happening in these changes that are occurring pretty rapidly, to ensure that you are being recommended, and what we need to do to help drive that. All right. So some real live examples. I'm really excited to share this, and Allie, I'm sure you are too. I think it's really helpful for everyone to see the impact and what's happening out there.
Yeah, we've got some clients here that we share, Root Beta and Satisfied, that we wanted to share some real world results with. But Emily, I think if you want to actually start talk a little bit about what
Sure.
Satisfied has done with Heritage, and then I can go into some of what I've actually seen.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So Heritage Tractor has been a long-term client of ours, where we've been collecting customer feedback. And just recently, only a few months ago, we started collecting reviews from those customers where we were already getting their feedback that they were collecting to help drive improvements and things like that within the organization. So it was very private customer survey information. And now we're directing those same customers at the same time during that experience to be able to leave reviews publicly. With that, they have seen a significant increase, but it's been consistent month over month across their locations with the number of reviews. Obviously, those are coming in very frequently as we ask customers, daily when they have an experience to leave feedback. And so they're definitely increasing everything, right? From reviews, volume, recency, the content of the customer comments that are being left as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. So Satisfied, you all have really helped Heritage get more reviews because just sending out those just requests for customers to leave them, happy customers, and then we've come in and go in and respond to those reviews and keep the listings up to date, things like that. And I love doing spot checks on clients like this within all the different platforms just to see how they show up. And so I've done I'm always doing spot checks on all the clients, but doing spot checks on Heritage, just searching things like best John Deere tractor service in this state. Heritage has 40 locations in 4 different states, I think, and doing it in all these different regions, knowing what the competitors are, some of them having higher ratings, some of them having been around longer. But Heritage in this last few months is showing up really consistently as either the top recommendation or one of the top recommendations, depending on where I'm searching and when. But sometimes the AI platforms will even tell you, if you watch when it's thinking, it says, looking at reviews, reputation, what all is on the website. And it even says things like not just 5-star reviews, but how recent they are, how often they're being left. Those are all factors that it will tell you right there are going into it. And so it's really cool to see these results that it's not going to name someone like Heritage as best overall if that evidence isn't available online in the reviews, in the listings. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't be the best without that, but it means that AI wouldn't know about it. So it's really cool to
Yeah.
see the growth there.
Yeah. And it's great. Like you said, when you run those searches, like it basically tells you what it's looking at. So it's telling you what it needs to be able, to be in those results. Right. So I know we're going to share some examples of the results that Allie ran. One thing we have available, if you haven't done yet, is we do try to measure dealerships' reputation scores. So this is just an example, and these are available on our website. It's all based off of public information. But before we started working on this with Heritage a few months back, just at this single location, that we're looking at here as an example, like they had increased their score more than 20 points just in a few short months by implementing this process. So the results can be pretty significant and also very quickly. You can see those results come into play. And this is where we're measuring those key factors when it comes to reviews, which is one of those key components when we're looking at Allie's results too of AI search results.
Right. And I think it's probably important for me to add right now that some listings are a little volatile right now. Sometimes Google is angry, Bing is angry, things break, things aren't consistent. So this is something we've dealt with even with clients like Heritage, but even through all of the listings fighting each other, still getting more and more consistently still keeps them ahead of the pack. And we see this across brands, but if there are any
Mhm.
Deere dealers in here, you may also be familiar with the Deere digital health checks. And we've seen those ratings and scores continue to increase too as we've done this. So it'll positively affect all of those things.
Yes. So I think we have one more example, Allie, that we wanted to share as well. And I think you've got like the actual results up here of some of those screenshots, which is great to see when you search. This is another shared client of ours, Virginia Maryland Tractor, that we work um, with alongside with Root and Beta.
Yeah, I really wanted to do, again, this is another client we share. So we wanted to do clients that we share, but also I really wanted to do another one that has a little bit of a different story from Heritage. They are getting more reviews more consistently in the same way, but they have a different number of locations, they have a different reputation historically, different website, things like that. But we're still seeing them rise above. I want you to look at that top screenshot there where it says which John Deere dealers in Virginia have the best reviews. I wanted to do this one just to take a snapshot to show you of what ChatGPT said it was thinking about when I ask the question. And that'll disappear. It'll kind of rotate through different things it's thinking. But this snapshot says, I'll compare current public review ratings and volume across Virginia John Deere dealers, since a tiny 5 and a strong rating across hundreds of reviews are not the same beast. So I think it's just wild that we can actually see that right there from ChatGPT saying, I don't care if they have a 5-star rating, if they only have one review. Basically is what they're saying. So they're actually digging into that. It's not just a quick reference to who's number one on Google. And then I included some screenshots here from some of the different platforms just to show you some of the differences. So the one on the left from Google, that is the AI overview, just which John Deere dealers in Northern Virginia are the most reliable. So it says right there, the top rated and most reliable John Deere dealers in Northern Virginia are primarily divided between two major dealership networks. And the first one they name is Virginia Maryland Tractor. If I had included the entire screenshot, you would also see links off to the side where the people can actually click on the site. And that is something that we're seeing more and more of. And I want to say that just because I know a lot of people are very anti-AI because they don't think people can click to their site. But the more you show up, the more likely there is to be a link showing up with it. So that is possible, and that is something we're seeing for these clients. The next one in the middle is ChatGPT. So best John Deere dealer near Charlottesville, Virginia. We just tried all these different searches and locations. And then right there, very clean answer, one recommendation, Virginia Maryland Tractor, Charlottesville. And it tells you why. It's an authorized John Deere dealer. All these things that it's saying about why it's pulling from the listings descriptions, from the website, all those things combined. And it's measuring whether they match each other and whether the reviews are supporting that. And then the third one here is from Perplexity, and it's a little small on my screen, but best John Deere dealer, Northern Virginia again. And it just shows you kind of how they're breaking them out. So it says Virginia Tractor gives a couple of specific locations. So I wanted to include that too, because some of them are giving some of the overall answers depending on what I searched. And some of them do give it by location, and they'll actually tell you this one has really great reviews, but this one lists that they do service and have a parts department, and there are reviews that say that. So all those things contribute to it. But the more reviews you get, the more likely you are to have people talking about all of those things.
Yeah, and I think it's getting easier and easier, like to your point where they're putting links in now in the responses, right? So you can get directly to your site. I think the purchasing experience probably is going to evolve probably pretty quickly here when, just even as a consumer using AI for, recommending certain products to buy something, right? You can even get like the link to that individual item to go purchase now. So it'd be interesting to see how this continues to evolve and shape that customer experience and the buying experience for dealers, right?
Absolutely.
Pretty exciting, but okay. Well, you've probably heard Allie and I have mentioned this probably a few times, I think, throughout today's conversation, but there's no number one ranking anymore. So the goal that we were always sort of working towards in the past, right, to be that number one on Google, it's changing and it doesn't work the same as it used to, right? So Allie, do you want to talk a little bit about both of these, kind of how this is working and how we're helping dealers with this? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is okay to say a few times because I think it's really, really important for a couple of reasons. So not just what I kind of said earlier about it's not just looking at the first ranking on Google, but within each platform, within ChatGPT, within Perplexity, within Gemini, within AI overviews, every possible place that you're doing an AI search, the response that you get will not be the same every time. And I think that's really important to emphasize because probably the most common question I get from clients is something like, hey, I got a call from a salesman and he said he searched this specific question and we didn't show up the first time. But this other guy searched it and they said we did. So what do we do? And the answer to that is there's nothing we can do to fix that because that's how it's designed. But it's probabilistic. So it doesn't just mean, oh, well, we shouldn't optimize anything because we can't guarantee we'll show up. It means we can guarantee that we're in the best possible spot to be pulled in the most often. So it is going to change person to person, device to device, and moment to moment. I can search the exact same thing an hour from now and could get a different answer. But if my brand, my website, my listings, my reviews are optimized really well and recent, and we're active in all those things, it is much more likely to show up maybe 85% of the time instead of 25% of the time. So please don't be discouraged by the answers changing. It's a little bit harder to track just with your eyeballs if you're not looking at it consistently, but I promise you it is making a difference. And then if you're not showing up at all, if you never show up in the answers, of course, that's telling you something too. If you're not getting reviews, that's telling you something too. So it's just, we can't measure it the same way that we measure traditional SEO because you'll be disappointed, but that doesn't mean that it's not working. So do you have anything else to add to that, Emily? I think there's so much I could talk about with it, but I think that's just a really important point to kind of drive home.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's probably a point of frustration and confusion for everyone, but something we probably need to often remind ourselves of is how this works. And there is some inconsistency there, but to keep, working towards that same goal and these behaviors are going to be the most important, even though you might get a slightly different results when ask it a question from one person to another, one day to the next, right? So. All
And
right.
I would,
So, oh yeah, go ahead, Ellie. Do you have something else to add to that?
I just, since I'm looking at this card that says you're shaping the training data, and that is definitely true. I want to make
Yeah.
one clarification though too, that when ChatGPT first became a thing and everybody was kind of like, oh, what is this? What is this new thing? You could ask about some brands and already get an answer or a recommendation even before there was any optimizing for AI. But there is a difference between the historical data that it was originally trained on and the live search layer that it's pulling from right now. So any brands that think, well, we were showing up as the recommended brand for this query from the beginning, that's great, but that's because it knew you, because you're a really well-established brand, but it's not because you were trusted as a currently authoritative, trustworthy dealer or brand. So it's really important to have both. You have a head start if you're already in the training data, but you want to be in that data moving forward and in the live search layer. So there's layers to it, but you are shaping what's moving forward, even if you were in there from the start.
Yeah. And I think that word you use, trusted, is so key in what it's really looking for. And that's why it wants this content and it's pulling from it, right? Especially from custom validated or verified customers, right? Who have less feedback, is why that's so important, is it's utilizing that to prove that you are a trusted brand, trusted recommendation that AI can make. I think as we get towards the end of today's call, before we get into what can you do now, I wanted to just cover like what's at stake, because there is clearly some apprehension around utilizing AI, whether that be for yourself personally, in your organization. I still talk to dealers who say, our leader does not let us use AI yet. And so that I think that there's less and less of those, but it still does exist. And so I think it's important, as this AI train has really taken off and is probably picking up speed rapidly and continuing to move fast. How can you get on or maybe have the conversation to persuade leadership, if that's what it is, or even have a conversation with yourself around, what are your apprehensions and concerns? Because I think there's a risk in not participating because it's going to move quickly. And I think the gap, or maybe the hill that you have to climb, is going to get bigger and bigger as others, like mainly competitors, start to move forward in this direction. So there are clearly a lot of dealerships that are trying to shape the story that AI tells, starting to create more trusted content that's available. Obviously, we see it through more and more dealerships signing up for services, probably with Allie through their program, as well as ourselves with at Satisfied and being able to automatically invite their customers to leave feedback and leave that feedback publicly on sites like Google, to where it can utilize that content to shape the AI summary results. And so I think just keep in mind, right, there could be less opportunities for this in the future. You do have so much available to you, right, readily through experiences that you've been provided and feedback from customers. Think about how you could leverage that today to start making that available for AI tools to utilize, testimonials, on your website, or getting more reviews on Google. I think those things are all really important, but I think we definitely want to make sure that you understand that there is a little bit of risk, and maybe it's even more than a little now, by not starting down this path, or at least starting to investigate it and work towards utilizing AI and generating some of this content that could be utilized in those AI summaries.
Definitely. And, a lot of thoughts on this, but I think one thing is, if you are avoiding AI, you don't want to use it, you're not allowed to use it, or however you think about it, you that's okay, in the sense that you don't have to get in there and use it to make decisions for yourself. You don't have to know how to build an AI. You don't have to reverse engineer it in order to still have a strategy that allows you to show up better for those who are using AI. Because the fact is, it's you're going to be talked about in AI. Hopefully you will, whether or not you have anything to do with it. So people ask me a lot when they're just asking me what I do, when they don't know anything about my job and they know that it has something to do with AI. A lot of the time they'll go to, so you work on building AI systems. And no, that's not it. It's very, very different from that. It's the complete other side of it. It's my clients we're helping them show up inside of AI for anybody who is using AI to search, but I'm not directly building those systems. I don't have anything to do with that. And so they're very separate things. So you can make sure that you're showing up there without having to be all up in it, for lack of a better term. And then also, I think, let me see what I thought of, like three different things when you were reading this. I'm trying to get it all together, but yeah, it's not a bad recommendation, because I don't know about you all, but for me personally, when I go in and like read reviews, or if I get recommendations from an AI overview or ChatGPT, if I see something that is lower ratings, but it looks like real feedback and looks like more reviews, I'm more likely to trust that, which ties back to what we were saying earlier
Yeah.
about just the frequency and the consistency. You would benefit a lot more from having lower reviews and maybe a few bad things said, but responding to those things and being active and continuing to get more positive ones as well. So there is a risk in that too. You can look at it that way, but the payoff is so much bigger. And then I lost the third thing, but I'm sure it'll come to me. So I'll pass it back to you for
Yes,
now.
we'll come back to
Yeah.
it. Whenever it comes to mind, right? Okay. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we want to give you some things to walk away with from this session. So what could you start doing immediately? And some of you may already have done some of this. So you may be jumping in at number 3 because you're already doing 1 and 2, and that's okay. No matter where you're at in this journey. But if you haven't yet, start to test and monitor how AI describes your dealership. So Allie shared some great examples in those real world examples of, how to prompt it with some questions. And if you haven't utilized AI for recommendations, that might be a really safe way to go out and explore what it says about your dealership and what it would recommend in your area. And like Allie said, those things change and it's not consistent. So screenshotting those results so that you can have a log of that, especially if you don't have an account yet, to where you can keep a history of it so you can see how those things change over time. Improve your review recency. So as we mentioned, a lot of times people are doing this in a way that it's a bit manual, and so it can be inconsistent, which impacts that recency. And we talked about the negative impacts of, having those spikes and the concern that it raises with these generative engine tools. What can you do inside your dealership to improve recency? So if you can start to get something back 1, 2 on a monthly basis, so that you don't have, I see some locations where it'll be months since they've had their last review come in. So start to implement a process that helps you post experience, like if it's a purchase or service experience, to gather that feedback so it can start coming back in more consistently. And then with that, you'll improve your recency. The increasing review specificity. So how can we help with mentioning specifics in that content as well? That's going to be really important. I think this is probably somewhere where most people, even if they are working on this today, have a lot of room for improvement. Allie, I'm not sure if you see that as well, but I think both on dealer responses as well as the comments that customers are leaving too, I think there's a lot of room for growth here for everyone. And then, go ahead. Did you have something to add, Allie?
No, I'm just agreeing with you.
Yeah. And then number 4, getting consistent signals across channels. So listings, right? Your website content, social content, right? Making sure we're sort of telling that same story through the feedback. So Allie's probably got a lot more great things to add here, but when we talk about you get these positive reviews back, I know for our clients, we have widgets that feed that information automatically back to their website. And then the ability, they can create social posts, right, out of the positive feedback that's been left as well, and share that on LinkedIn so that content is being repeated in more places and creating more consistency and trust and verification in the content that AI is pulling back.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that, sharing it on social, sharing it on your website. That comes back to that both and thing. It's everywhere. Everywhere you can get this information. It's AI engines are looking to see not just in one place, but is it consistent across all of these different social media? LinkedIn right now is a huge one for B2B and commercial recommendations in AI search. And I think that's really overlooked. So sharing your reviews on LinkedIn is going to help boost it. Sharing them on Facebook, putting them on your location pages on your website where they can actually match the location to some of the reviews. And I love working with Satisfied, working with dealers who have Satisfied, because I've always had, plenty of ideas for my clients about how to get more reviews. But if you are a dealer, especially if you work in marketing at a dealership, or maybe you just don't have a lot of day-to-day interaction with all the locations because you have multiple, it can be hard to get your salespeople to consistently ask for reviews and then see them actually come in. So Satisfied is so great because they not only request them, but they request them in a way that's makes sense, makes it easy for the customer, and is still getting real reviews. You don't want a service that's just making up reviews, or having bots go and add them, or just asking people and then going and adding them on their behalf. None of that is going to be helpful. So having them, whatever you need to do, if it's something like Satisfied, or also encouraging your salespeople on the specificity thing. One thing that I've seen help is if you are asking your salespeople to request for reviews more, having some sort of reward system where maybe if their names are mentioned, I mean, that's one point of specificity and also helps them feel good about themselves. And, maybe if they get a little bonus or something like that. And then if that works, they're more likely to ask, talk about what you bought, talk about your experience today. And so all of those things work together really, really well. And I'll also add on the consistent across channels. It's important too to at least keep an eye on the different review platforms, not just Google, but Yelp, Bing. You don't have to manage everyone, but sometimes they do fight with each other. So if there's old reviews that never got responded to, or cached reviews on another platform, just getting those responded to or cleaned up a little bit is also going to help.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you, Allie. I think those are all great points. The last one though, actively monitoring and responding to Root and Beta. And I know this is how we work well together. For those mutual clients we shared examples of, Allie and your team at Root and Beta are actively monitoring those. You're responding to them. So like they use our platform to respond to the customers that are leaving those, especially as you do maybe implement something like Satisfied, where you start to get back increasingly overwhelming, maybe volume of reviews. It helps having a team like Root and Beta to be able to respond to those. but they're able to respond in a way too that also addresses like number three, right? So they can mention like the customer name and maybe that employee's name if they're mentioned. But we want to respond to both positive and negative. That's more content available for the tool as well. So again, think about how you're responding to those reviews. How can you be more specific? Making sure that it's not just the negative ones, right? Those are all opportunities to create more content every time you respond to a review that's been left.
Yeah, if somebody says, I love the track loader I bought today, then you should mention the track loader in your response. So glad you're happy with your track loader and your service. Like just it's showing consistency and again the specificity. So when we respond, we try to respond within 24 hours. That's also important response time. And do not pick and choose what you respond to. I want to say that because we get that a lot. Dealers don't want to respond to certain reviews because maybe they're not good, or even in some cases, maybe there's a legal issue or something. In those cases, I mean, if there's a legal issue, maybe check with your attorney, but you can also just say in the response, because of the nature of this, we can't discuss it here, but we're going to get in touch with you. But have something there. If it is negative, say, we'd love to talk to you more about this, and take it offline. Give them a phone number, give them an email. That way people can see when they read your responses that you are active, you're responding, you're not just ignoring reviews you don't like, because that's a signal too. It's a signal if your dealer is just ignoring anything they don't like, and it's not a good one. So make sure that you're responding to all of them in the same way, even if they're negative.
Yes, those are great opportunities. So don't shy away from them. Questions? Keegan, I think I've seen quite a few questions come in. So hopefully with the few minutes we have left, we can get to everyone's.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll go, there's about three or a few questions in the Q&A, so I'll go ahead and read these off. So first question, when responding to reviews, is it best practice to look up the customer's account or service details first so the response can be more specific and personalized, even if those details weren't mentioned in the review itself? For example, if a customer says the salesperson was knowledgeable and helpful but doesn't mention what they purchased, would it add value to reference the specific equipment or service in the reply? Have you seen that level of personalization lead to better engagement or customer perception?
That is such a great question. And my answer is yes, absolutely. If you can do that, it definitely can't hurt. You don't have to. I mean, if you're using like us, if you're using root and beta to respond because you don't have time to respond and you want it to be done consistently, then we're not going to have that same access. But it just depends on how much time you have and how you want to do it and who's responding to your reviews. So even if you do have like an agency like root and beta responding to your reviews, we as in the agency can send over a draft of our responses. If you have someone that is able to just send a quick email and say, yeah, that looks good, or look it up and let us know, yeah, that looks good, but here's some additional information. We can do it that way. And that is always helpful if you can get more, especially with negative reviews. We do usually ask our dealers to actually look into it and see what happened so that we know what happened instead of just responding to whatever claim was being made in the actual review itself. So if you can do that, yeah, definitely do it. It's not required, but it helps.
And you can make an initial response too in those situations and then go back and edit the response too. I don't know if people realize that, like, it's not set in stone once it's been posted, right? That you can modify it to over time.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if you maybe aren't going to hear back from someone who has the information for a week, you don't want to wait a week to post it, but you can always just go back and add that in. So I'm glad you said that.
Okay, awesome. Next question. What specific things outside of reviews should be optimized on your daily website for AI recommendations?
Yeah, so I'll just say for some of the biggest things I've seen that are tied to this are, as I mentioned earlier, the location pages. You want to have the locations not only listed, but with their own individual descriptions, preferably descriptions that don't exactly match, but would not contradict whatever the description of the listings platform is. So you want to have some specifics there. Anything that stands out about a specific location, make sure you have it. Parts, services they offer, any special things, have that there with your hours, a map, all those things. But then all the content on your website will feed into it. So blogs about equipment comparisons, frequently asked questions, what people can do to get certain types of service, how they should schedule out their off-season maintenance. I mean, all those things will feed into it, but start with the location pages and then the product pages as well. If you have products on your site, should be optimized, but keep that in mind with any content you upload. Emily, what would you add?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're seeing more dealers go to location specific pages, which I think in the past it was more just a location page that maybe listed the cities of the locations. But we're definitely seeing that, especially as we build out like these widgets to push back the positive feedback that customers are leaving, that content basically like replacing what used to be testimonials. It allows them the ability to put that content like on location specific content there, as well as their homepage. And then that, again, that's just more content. And again, like you said, keeping that consistent with the listings too is important.
Okay, and then just to be mindful of everybody's time, we only have time for one more question, which is, should you update the testimonial or reviews that are on your website after a certain time? Does switching it up catch the attention of AI?
That's a really good question.
I think just keeping them updated yet is important.
Yep. Yeah, I know with our tool, the way it works, the way we plug back into dealer's website is we do pull in the more recent reviews and the older ones fall off, so that all of the testimonial reviews that are on the website are from a recent time period. And so that helps. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your
So
question.
they're basically live with a little lag. They're not just this
Yes,
from 10 years ago.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was what I would say too. Can't believe we're already out of time. I'm going to be here all day.
I know. Yes. Thanks everyone for hanging with us this morning. Allie and I, our contact information is on here. So if anyone wants to get in touch with us, feel free to do that. I have a little QR code too if you wanted to run one of those scorecard reports like we showed earlier to check out how you're doing compared to your local competitors. It was great speaking with you, Allie, this morning, and appreciate your taking some time out of your busy days.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.